So conservation of mass, straight away, it means that the extensive property that we are talking about, N, this is the mass of the system. Okay. And we all know that as per the law of conservation of mass and by definition of a control mass system, it has a constant mass and it cannot change with time. Therefore, we can write that dm dt of any system, any identified system will be zero, control mass system, by definition of a control mass system. Well, you can argue and say that mass can be converted into energy, and that is how I mean it might not be individually conserved, but you have to consider its energy equivalence. But that occurs in a relativistic situation and not the kinds of physical problems that we are talking about here. So in the context of the physical problems that we are considering, this is zero. So let us apply this dm dt of the system. So small n is capital N per unit mass. So small n is equal to 1. So this one. And this is zero that we have just now seen. So now what we will do is we will make one assumption of stationary control volume. Stationary control volume means that a control volume is not moving, and the objective of considering a stationary control volume is that for that the relative velocity and the absolute velocity, they are the same. So if it is not a stationary control volume, there is no problem, but you have to keep in mind that the relative velocity has to be used rather than the absolute velocity. All other things will remain the same. But the second assumption that we are going to talk about is a bit more subtle. We will consider non-deformable control. Non-deformable control volume means so you have a volume, some volume V. This V could change with time if it is deformable. So non-deformable means V is not a function of time. Okay, that is the hallmark of non-deformable control volume. So in the context of the present analysis, non-deformable control volume, what it means is that you can as well put this time derivative inside. Why we can put this time derivative inside is because this V is not a function of time. So that is the full implication of this assumption. Had this volume itself been a function of time, then there is a difference in putting this derivative inside and outside the integral. And we'll see later on that if this function itself is a function of the independent variable, then you can bring the derivative in and out of the integral, but with a correction to accommodate that this itself is a function of this variable. And in a one-dimensional situation, that is given by a theorem in calculus known as Leibniz theorem. But if we consider non-deformable control volume, then it doesn't matter whether you take the time derivative inside or outside the integral, because your variable volume is not a function of time. So with these two clear assumptions, what you get at the end is, I mean, number one, you can take this inside, and number two, you can relate or you can replace the relative velocity with absolute velocity. Okay. So once you do that, one of the great advantages here that we will see, number one, let us look into this expression. So this is a vector, right? Rho into v. Rho is a scalar, v is a vector. So combined way it's a vector and indicative of the momentum actually. So this vector has a meaning. So you can call it actually the momentum per unit volume. But anyway, so rho into v is the vector with which you have a dot product of the unit vector. So let us write this as a control surface integration. So once you have this integration over the surface, so this is like this contour integral over a surface which encloses the volume V, that is the control surface. I show it by some red color. So the surface integral of a vector, let us call the vector rho v dot this one. This will be nothing but the volume integral over the volume, which is the control volume of the same vector dv. Sorry, divergence of. I have. Let me just erase it and write it. So equal to, so divergence of this vector dv. So this is the divergence theorem. So Gauss was the mathematician who introduced this theorem, and we have talked about this earlier as a part of some of the mathematical foundations. So what it means is that you can replace this integral with a volume integral, which is divergence of rho v. So now in the in the right hand side, we have two terms, both are converted to volume integral. So this manipulation or this mathematical step is required with the motivation of converting both the terms in the form of the same structure. In this case, the structure is volume integral. So once that is done, we can write it like this. So we have combined the two terms and we have written this. Okay, this equation. So let us clean up the space and now. So this is a equation where you have integral of a function over a volume is 0. So the question is that integral of a function over a volume is 0. Does it mean that the function has to be 0? Apparently, I mean, if you think it as a straightforward, I mean, decision making, yes. If integral of some f dv equal to 0, f has to be 0. But I will give you a counter example. So let us say that I plot. I mean, this is a different example. It has nothing to do with this, but just to show you a counter example. Say we have a function like this, maybe just sin x, fx equal to sin x. And your limits of integration will be from one full cycle, that is 0 to 2 pi. Okay. So if that be the case, what is integral of fx dx from say 0 to 2 pi? So that is quite clear. I mean, by the meaning of the integral, it's a sum of these two areas, and if this is plus whatever, this is minus of the same. So you have the integral equal to 0, but the function locally is not 0 at all points except at certain points. So it is not actually trivial to think that if integral of a function is 0, then the function has to be 0 everywhere. So I'm giving you a counter example, but that lesson of the counter example, what I have shown here, doesn't apply here. Can you, in the context that we are talking about, can one of you tell why?
The control volume is arbitrarily chosen.
Yes.
But in the case of sine graph, it is 0
yeah,
to 2 pi. That is a fixed.
So you have fixed up a limit only for which you can apply this. But here, this is absolutely arbitrary. So there is no particular limit where we are sort of constraining this to be valid. Here there is a particular limit for which we are constraining it to be valid. But here there is no limit over which we are constraining this to be valid. That means this is arbitrary. So that arbitrariness can be honored only if this is 0 for all cases. So what it means is that this leads to. So this is another way of deriving the continuity equation. So this is what is the learning skill through an advanced subject, where by several different approaches we can converge to the same thing, but each approach is giving us a different perspective or a concept. So if you recall, we have actually used 3 different approaches to derive this continuity equation. In our previous chapter, we considered 2 different approaches. One is a control mass based approach, where we had a control mass and we simply stated that the mass of the control mass is not changing with time. That is, the density into volume is not changing with time. So that was one principle based on an identified control mass system. The second was an identified control volume. In a Cartesian system we did it and tried to find out a mathematical way of writing the mass balance over a differential control volume. Right? A small control volume, if you recall, delta x, delta y, delta z were the dimensions, where all of those were tending to 0. This third way of doing it is a different approach altogether, where it is still a control volume balance, but it is not a differentially small control volume we are talking about. It's an arbitrary finite control volume, and we are considering that finite control volume analysis to begin with, but transforming that to a differential equation by virtue of certain generic mathematical steps which can be applied for many different scenarios. That start with the control volume balance, convert all the terms to the volume integral by converting the surface integral to volume integral using the divergence theorem, and subsequently use the consideration that the control volume is arbitrary, so that you can arrive at a differential equation from the control volume balance. So three different approaches, of course, because they are all relating to the same physical principle, they are finally converging to the same equation. So we will now illustrate with examples some application of this conservation of mass. So maybe problem number 1. So you have two parallel surfaces. You may imagine these are parallel rectangular plates. This is another one. The difference between these two is that the top one is moving down with a velocity, uniform velocity, v naught, but the bottom one is, this is stationary. There is a fluid in between these two. So when the plate is coming down, the fluid is squeezed and leaving radially outwards. Actually, we have solved a similar problem in one of our previous chapters, but I will make a subtle change from that problem. Just for simplicity in calculation, we assume these are rectangular plates, so that we can use a Cartesian coordinate system. This is x-axis and y-axis that we have drawn. Let this be some dimension, let us call it b, and for symmetry this is also b. And the instantaneous gap between the two plates is h, which is a function of time. This v0 is a uniform, and it's like a constant. I mean, uniform space wise and time wise. So let us, instead of uniform, be a bit more specific. Let us say that this is constant. So in that way, we have an initial condition. That means when the plate has just started coming down, that at time equal to 0, h is h naught. Okay. So your objective is to find out. Okay, the other thing that is given. So this is given, number 1, and number 2, the velocity profile in the gap. This is given as u as a function of y is equal to some 4 u naught into y by h minus this. Okay. So just can one of you tell that what kind of velocity field is it talking about? Steady or unsteady, uniform or non-uniform? Any one of you. So my question is that this is given. Yes, is this steady or unsteady or uniform or non-uniform?
Steady and non-uniform.
Unsteady and non-uniform.
Steady and non-uniform.
Okay, anybody else who wants to tell anything else? I have got two answers and two different answers from two different students. Any other answer which is different from these two? If there is no other answer different from these two, I mean either of these two, I mean it's okay. But if some of you have an answer which is different from these two, you can tell. Otherwise, I mean, my understanding is that possibly some of you will think either the answer number 1 what we got or the answer number 2 that we have got from the two of the students. They are the possible answers. So first of all, it is non-uniform. It is quite clear from here, because uniformity means what? It doesn't depend on the location. So here the dependence of the velocity is through y as a coordinate with respect to position, and one of these is good enough. So because it is dependent on y, that means it is not locally uniform, at least. So this is a major change from the problem that we solved earlier, where we considered that the velocity profile is locally uniform. That means at a given x, it is not dependent on y. Right? That was the problem that we earlier solved, if you could remember. So that is one change. And the second, the point about steady or unsteady is it is unsteady because you have h here, but h is a function of time. So h is not a constant. The top plate is coming down, so h is varying with time, and therefore this ideally, I mean, although it is written as u as a function of y, because time is implicit here, and that is why in the mathematical function it is not written as a function of time. But actually it's a combined function of y and time at least. So in that way, it is unsteady, non-uniform, and we have to. Our objective is to find out. So find u naught. So what is this u naught? That is what you have to find out. So because we have just, I mean, this problem can be approached in many ways, but because we have just learned the application of Reynolds transport theorem for conservation of mass, I think that it may be interesting if we can apply that to this problem. So first of all, this Reynolds transport theorem is about a control volume analysis. So let us identify a control volume. So normally by this control volume identification, we mean that we show a boundary, a conceptual boundary of the control volume. So for any control volume analysis that you present anywhere, I mean, as a part of the problem given in exam or homework, etc. So the first job is to, if you have a sketch of the problem, show it schematically. But sometimes even by sketch it is difficult to explain it fully. So it may also be supplemented by additional statements. But the sketch is a must in a way that without that, when I'm writing this system, control volume, etc. System we don't have to define because it is something which is conceptual. Some collection of fluid with constant mass. So that collection cannot be identified in a diagram. So in that way, that you cannot identify. But control volume you can identify because it's an identified region in your domain. So if you are not showing a control volume in the diagram, that means you do not have a well-defined solution to the problem, that you are applying the Reynolds transport theorem for a control volume, but you do not, you are not in a position to tell which control volume it is. So that should not happen. So let us write this dm dt of the system. Let us just write it in a bit more informal way. The same equation. We'll use the integral form, not the differential form. So the second term I have written this one, just mass within the control volume. If you recall this integral rho dv, which was there in the second term, that is nothing but mass within the control volume. Now, when you are solving this problem, so once the control volume is identified, first of all, this is left hand side straight away 0, conservation of mass. The first term in the right hand side is 0. Why it is 0? Because you have a non-deformable control volume. This is not changing with time, and it is being occupied by an incompressible fluid. So that means it's whatever is the density, that density is not changing with time inside the control volume, and volume anyway you have identified. So because density is not changing with time and volume is identified, so mass is not changing with time. Now you can well argue that density is not changing with time. It is not actually given. Yeah, it is true, and therefore that will become one of our assumptions. I mean, if density is a function of time, that will add complexity, but that assumption we consider as a reasonable way forward, because if density were changing with time, this would have been mentioned somewhere as a part of the problem statement. So rho is not a function of time. Okay. Remember, although rho is not a function of time, it could be a function of position. Right? So in a way, so let me ask this. So the basic issue here is that can we treat this fluid as incompressible or not? Okay. So by putting this assumption up, are we considering this to be incompressible or not? Any one of you? So my question is that by putting this assumption, what I have written under the assumption, are we taking the fluid as incompressible or not?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Sir, we are only taking the local V0, local derivative of density.
So what physically we are assuming here? We are physically assuming that at any given point density is not changing with time, but we are not making any assumption regarding a possibility of density varying from one point to the other. That means this dotted box that I have drawn. So in that you could have different densities at different points, and this assumption doesn't restrict that. It only tells that whatever is the density at one of those points, the density there will not change with time. That is the physical thing that it is talking about. So in that way, this assumption is not that much restrictive, because density will change with time under certain very peculiar circumstances, when say there is a change of phase, or there is a sudden compressibility change in one location or at certain location. So those are some more, say, specialized considerations, not very common considerations. So common consideration is that, well, let it be even inhomogeneous fluid with density different at different places, but at a given place it is not changing with time. So in that way, I mean, it could be compressible, but only thing, density at a point not changing with time. So with these two terms set to 0, we are left with the last term, which is nothing but surface integral. So this surface integral is at which surfaces. So the control volume, as you have 1, 2, 3, 4 surfaces visible from here, and front and back which is not visible in a two-dimensional framework. So at least top, bottom, left, right, these 4 surfaces are there, and back and front, these are not relevant in that XY plane. So out of these 4 surfaces, which are the surfaces of the control surface through which there is a fluid flow? Any one of you? Out of these 4 surfaces.
The top and the 2 side surfaces.
Okay. So the top and the 2 side surfaces. So let us just mark that. Let me try to use a different color, although I do not know how well it will be visible. So surface number 1, this is top. Surface number 2 and surface number 3. Clearly the bottom one is not participating because it is a impenetrable or impermeable solid. There are no holes in the plate, and simply fluid cannot come out through the bottom surface. So now in this integral, if we now break it into these 4 surface integrals, the bottom one, the surface 4 will not feature. Out of 1, 2 and 3 will all feature, or some will not feature? In the integration.
Sir, one will not feature.
Why one will not feature?
Sir, the direction of the area is perpendicular to the area that the one is.
No, just physically imagine this. Forget about all those things. So you have an imaginary surface which is the dotted line, and when the top plate is coming down, it is pushing some fluid through this, right? Isn't it? When the top plate is coming down, it is pushing some fluid through this with the velocity v0, and that means that there is a mass flux through the surface 1. Is it not? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now my question is that the plate is coming down with a velocity v0, which is a constant. Where is the guarantee that the fluid also enters this marked surface 1 with the same velocity? Can any one of you tell? Where is the guarantee? I have told, the problem statement has told about the movement of the plate. It has never told about the velocity of the fluid.
Sir, we have taken the consideration that it's a non-deformable control volume, so it's not a function of time. So in that case, though the plate is moving, our control volume will be fixed in that. So mass
No, that
flux
is all
will
right. Mass flux will be there. I agree. So control volume is non-deformable. It is a fixed one that I have drawn. And so when the plate is coming down at that instant, it is pushing this fluid through this. That is all right. But my question is that when the plate is pushing the fluid through this control volume, where is the guarantee that the fluid is pushed with the same velocity V0 as the velocity of the plate? That is my question. Not the first question that the plate will push the fluid, or the first issue that the plate will push the fluid through this surface, that we have physically resolved. But the second point is a follow-up of the first one. If it pushes, it is pushing with the same velocity V0. So where is the how do you sort of ascertain it? That is my specific.
Sir, because we've assumed that the density remains constant with time. So if it weren't equal, then there would be a change with respect to time, and that would perpetuate.
See, I mean, see, these are certain things which, if you think very carefully, you will realize that I mean, with knowledge, this is a danger of knowledge. So with knowledge, our mind becomes more convoluted. I mean, it gets reasonably more difficult to have a simplistic, straightforward approach of understanding a situation. So try to understand one simple situation. I mean, I'm just talking about a different thing. So imagine that there is a solid boundary like this. Okay. And a fluid is falling on the solid boundary. I'm not telling whether it is moving, stationary, etc. Let us say that this is a stationary solid boundary, and the fluid is falling on it with a velocity, say some velocity u0. I'm just using, sorry, u0 is there, some, so u whatever, I mean some another symbol. Let us use a different symbol. Okay. So uf, u fall. Now, can any one of you tell that what is this value of this u fall? Just I have given this condition. There is a plate which is fixed, and the fluid is falling on the plate, and we are considering a point of impingement, and the fluid is falling in a direction perpendicular to the plate. That also I am telling. So what is that velocity of the fluid at the marked position, that circle that I have drawn in that figure? Is it, first of all, I mean, can you deterministically tell from this description, the physical description, or you want something more, or is it good enough? And if it is good enough, what is the value? Can any one of you tell? It is actually a very simple question. Do not think that I have asked a very convoluted question. Any one of you tell? Yeah, just tell. I mean, there is. I mean, even if you tell wrong, it is okay. We all learn by mistakes. If you do not tell or open up, maybe you may appear to be more intelligent in front of your friends, that you do not commit mistakes while speaking. There is a noise. So I suggest that whoever is speaking, let that person only unmute and others keep muted, so that I can actually hear very clearly what whoever is speaking.
The value will be 0 because the particle can't go through it.
Perfect answer. 100% correct. So the value will be 0. I mean, there is absolutely not even a one word error in this answer. So the fluid cannot actually go through this plate because there is no through hole. So we have not told that there is some hole or perforation in the plate. So that means what will be the fate of the fluid? It has to come to a standstill at that location so far as the vertical component is concerned. right? So this is simply following from the kinematic constraint of impenetrability or no penetration in more simple English, no penetration. So no penetration means that the fluid really cannot penetrate the solid boundary until and unless there is a hole. So this is a pure kinematic constraint, and this this follows from the simple observation that the fluid cannot penetrate a solid boundary until and unless there is a hole. So the first inference is that this has nothing to do with density, steady, unsteady, so many other complex things that you have all of us have learned over the years. So I think that if this question is asked to a school student, the answer will be more spontaneous, and in that way it is easier to answer. Now that you have learned so many things, with lots of integral and differential calculus, this simple thing will not actually appear to be so obvious, but it is actually simple and obvious. So this in fluid mechanics is called as no penetration boundary condition. No penetration boundary condition. Okay. Now I put a bit of spice to the problem. So what I say is that this plate is not fixed, but this plate is coming down at a constant speed of 1 meter per second. Okay. So now what will be this velocity? This one. Can any one of you tell?
1 meter per second.
Again 1 meter per second. The reason is the same physics, no penetration boundary condition. So no penetration boundary condition, I mean, to generalize it under this condition, we can say that it is zero relative normal component of velocity. Relative. Otherwise, there is a difference between this fluid and solid velocity, and how that difference can be accommodated, because where will that velocity go? Because it cannot penetrate through the wall. So simply, if the plate is coming down with 1 meter per second, the fluid also has to follow it down with 1 meter per second to ensure this no penetration. So the same physics is occurring here. So because the plate is coming down and there is no penetration at the wall, and that is why the fluid is being pushed through this uniformly with a velocity of V0, right? So this is a relatively simple physics, but not an obvious physics. And I'm just trying to help you to learn how to think, not really learn how to solve a problem. Because how to solve a problem is easier than learning how to think. And if you are not able to learn how to think, you cannot apply the same principles to a different condition where these apparently simple conditions will not work. And then you will be tempted to use the same thing because you are not able to follow the thought process. So I'm trying to make you follow the thought process rather than showing you some straightforward integration and differentiation. So that means you have the surface 1 for which mistakenly I put the eraser, but anyway, this surface 1, let me just reconstruct the diagram. Okay, so that we have through surface 1 the fluid entering with velocity V0 uniform. What about surface 2 and 3? When we consider this integral, do we consider the integral of over surface, all the surfaces 1, 2 and 3, 4 not for sure is not required, but 1, 2 and 3 all or not? Yeah, can any one of you tell? All the surfaces 1, 2 and 3 will come up in the integral or not?
Sir, it will come.
All will come. Anybody else with a different answer?
Maybe the second wall will not come because it is in the middle. So maybe from the view of symmetry, there will be no flux at the middle.
Yeah. So I mean, and maybe you are a bit uncertain, but what you are saying is telling is summarily correct. So imagine, see, we have considered a control volume like this. So actually, if you think in this way, we have tried to exploit the symmetry. So in that way, there will be a sort of mirror control volume here, and the entire analysis is based on the combination of these two control volumes. This half control volume we are just writing for the calculation, but actually the control volume is this entire space between the two plates. Now, just consider the situation. So if you consider only half of this control volume, yes, there is a I mean the fluid is coming down, so it is squeezed like this. But also see the other half, because of symmetry, it is equally squeezed. So there will be a counter flow, from that towards the right. So if you consider these two together, there is actually no flux across the center line. For a rectangular geometry, it is difficult to imagine, but had it been a circular, cylindrical shaped thing, and you have the center line, so there will be no flux across the center line, because all will be radial. So because it's a rectangular one, it is now you may break it up into two parts. For cylindrical, you don't have to break, because a cylindrical geometry, when you consider a radius, the radius includes this part and this part, everything. But when you consider the rectangular part, so it is better to consider to be inclusive. That is, you may consider two half control volumes, making a full control volume. Out of that, because of the the symmetry, there will be exact sort of balancing or counter action of the two fluxes. So the net flux through this center line will be 0. So in that way, maybe, I mean, it doesn't really matter whether you consider the full or the half, but just to be sort of understanding this thing properly, let us make it a full one, so that there is no ambiguity about it. But what I wanted to impress upon you is that the consideration of the full and the half will give you the same thing, because eventually there is no net flux through the center line. Okay. So what it means is that now this will be, the control surface will be sum total of this 1 and 3. When you consider the 1 and the 3, because we have exploited the symmetry, either we could take this 1 and its mirror 1 and 3 and its mirror 3, or only half of these, only 1 and 3, but not their mirrors. So they are the same, because it will be just 2 times what we are talking about here, and that is the hallmark of the symmetry here. So we will break it up therefore into 2 integrals. So just to make sure that you know how to apply this theorem. So we'll write first of all integral of this 1 over 1 plus integral of 3 this is equal to 0, right? That is the conservation of mass. And what it essentially tells is actually what mass is entering from the top is leaving from the side. That is the physics that is conveyed by this mathematical expression. So it is very, very important whenever you are trying to look into a mathematical equation, you try to create an imagination of the physics that it is conveying. This is what is the poetry of mathematics. So mathematics is not just like a dumb collection of symbols and expressions, but it is having a poetry, and the poetry of mathematics is the physics. So what you see here, the first term. So let us write it term by term. So what is the velocity vector v at the surface 1? That is minus v naught unit vector along y, that is j dot. What is the unit vector outward normal to the surface 1? That is the unit vector along y, positive y. And what is this? So these are all constant. These are not varying over the area. So it is simply this into multiplication of the area. That is the b into the width. Width is another width perpendicular to the plane of the figure. Okay. So this is the first. And the second one. So this will be integral over the area because the velocity is a variable. So this is a function of the y, which is included in dA. So rho v. So v is what? V is u into I. So this is u is a function of y, but it is in a x direction. Dot eta, the unit normal vector, that is I. dA is you can say dy into width. And your integral limit of y is from y equal to 0 to y equal to h, which is a function of time. Okay. Now, so the one of the obvious things is that the width doesn't matter, so it is getting cancelled. But one of the things which we have implicitly assumed while writing at least the first term is what I have not spelled out, but I have implicitly assumed an additional thing which I have not told. So can you tell what is that? The first term in the equation.
So relative velocity should be considered, but that part would be 0.
No. That is what relative velocity? See, this is a fixed surface, and the plate is coming down, so it is pushing pushing the fluid with the same velocity, which is minus v naught. That's all. I mean, what more is required here? But something other than that, which I have not mentioned but used in this equation.
The density constant.
Yes, density is uniform over that area 1, right? Not an absolute constant, but at least uniform over that area of 1, right? So now that is why it's you can say it's a constant over that area. So it is locally uniform over 1. So in a similar spirit, if we want to take this rho out of the integral, we will consider this is locally uniform over 3, right? And then the next step that we will do is that we will assume that these two local uniform values are the same. Okay, and we will cancel each other. That is what we actually do for solving problems like this without thinking that what we are doing. So what we are doing is we are assuming that the densities are locally uniform over the surfaces across which the fluid is flowing, and that particular value, that is the same at those surfaces, so that we can cancel. Why I am telling this is because it actually doesn't restrict the fluid to be of constant density, because a hypothetical condition where it is just a constant uniform value at 1 and 3, but any variation in between 1 and 3, that would also satisfy this. This is not so easy to visualize and understand, because simply when we are taking rho out of the integral and cancelling, our mind tells an intuition, well, density is a constant. But here it is a constant, but it is a less restrictive constant. And this is the beauty of a control volume analysis, that when we are talking about the surface integrals, what happens in details inside is not important. So inside rho could vary with x, y, whatever. It will not sure vary with time, because that term we cancelled, but it could vary with x and y in between, inside, in whatever way. But it doesn't harm the solution of this problem, so long as it has a this constant over the surfaces 1 and 3. I mean, same constant over the surface. I hope you can follow this. It is these are all very subtle things. See, without understanding this, you can get full 100 marks in fluid mechanics, but you will never have the kind of enriched understanding of the subject which a mastery in the subject demands. So now with this consideration, so you can perform the dot products. I'm just writing it here. So this is minus V naught into B plus integral of U dy from 0 to h is equal to 0. So if you take this minus as other side, then it's basically A1 V1 equal to A2 V2 type of thing. That is volume flow in is equal to volume flow out. That is what it is telling essentially. But it is telling after going through a lot of assumptions and simplifications, that our simple intuitive approach of applying a formula without thinking that whether we can apply the formula or not, that thoughtless approach is not conceptually good, although it leads to the same thing for problem solving. So integral U dy, we'll just substitute 4 U naught into y by h minus y by h whole square dy from 0 to h is equal to V0 into V. So now it is very straightforward. So you can get if you just do the integration, well, this u0 is not a function of y, so you can integrate this with function of y, and then you will get V0 an expression for this. This is straight algebra. So and the expression for h also you can write, I mean h as a function of time. So because you have this no penetration boundary condition, so this will lead to dh dt is equal to minus V0, right? So that means if you integrate it at time equal to 0, h is equal to h0, so h is equal to h0 minus V0t. So in this expression, after doing all this, you will get h, and there you substitute h equal to h0 minus V0 into t. So if you do that, you will get an expression for this u0. Sorry, this is not this, u0. I'm giving you the final answer, which is written in my notebook. I have no means of checking whether it is correct or not, because the intermediate steps are not there, but you can check, and if you find any discrepancy, later on after calculation, you let me know. So this is 3 by, this is the answer of the problem. 3 by 4, V naught into, 3 by 4 into V naught, not 3 by 4, I think it will be 3 by 2. 3 by 2 V naught into B divided by H naught minus V naught. Okay. So you can check, and you can clearly see that the time dependence is not only there in H, which is reflective in these terms, the time dependence is also there in U naught because it depends on H and H is a function of time. So I mean it's a unsteady problem and non-uniform flow problem where the you can mention it like that there is an amplitude to it and there is a local variation. So U0 is like amplitude and the term in the curly bracket is the local variation. So can you tell from this whether this flow is accelerating or not? This is the last question that I will put up on this problem before winding up this problem and moving forward. So is this accelerating or not? Is this flow having acceleration or not? Yes or no? Can any one of you tell? Yeah, nobody wants to tell. I mean, can you hear me?
It is accelerating.
Yes, it is accelerating. I mean, can you give some reasons? Qualitative reasons, not calculation.
When time tends to infinity, we see that U naught tends to 0. So eventually there will be no fluid coming out. So it is negative acceleration.
Again, I mean, you can just simply think in a different way. So acceleration could be because of two reasons. One is the velocity at a given point itself, at a given location, is changing with time. Now that is one of the most straightforward possibilities of acceleration. So at a given location, at a given y, you will find that the velocity is changing with time because h is a function of time and u naught is a function of time. So that means you will have a change of u locally with change of time, and that will straight away give an acceleration. Okay, so let us conclude this problem and let me give a short break of about 5 minutes. You can in these 5 minutes you can sort of look into this calculation, see whether this answer is coming, and get a bit refreshed, and we will come back in another 5 minutes or so. Okay, so let us continue. Have you checked the final answer of this one, whether it is correct or not? Have you
Yes,
checked?
correct.
It's correct. Okay, that's fine. So we will solve the next problem now. So this is problem number 2. There is a conical tank like this, which is having a small hole at the bottom, much smaller than the upper radius. So this upper radius, let us give some dimensions. This is capital R. This is a small hole. It is told. It is a small hole. I mean, small means you have to imagine much smaller than capital R is the radius, that is called a small hole. Radius equal to R. O. Radius of the outlet, RO. This cone has a semi-vertical angle of theta, and the total height h. Okay. So initially this hole is blocked. So the full the tank is filled up with water. So we are stating that it is water and liquid water. So no question of any density variation, etc. So but this hole at the bottom, this is unplugged and water is now coming out from time equal to 0. So at some instant, you see the free surface, the free water surface here, which is a local age, or the time dependent age rather, and this age is a function of time, and in fact it is decreasing with time as water is coming out. So you have to find out what is the value of dH dt when small h is equal to capital H by 2. You have to imagine that this is the direction of gravity, and that's all. So this also will require a control volume analysis, again with certain assumptions, and we will try to see what are the major assumptions needed here. We will have not much ambiguity regarding the density because liquid water is told, and we can take safely the density as a constant for this problem. H is not so much tall that density will vary like that. So in that way, let us say that VE is the velocity at which the water ejects. This we do not know actually, but let us see what we can do about it. So here, as usual, and it is quite clear. So the first thing that you have to ascertain is what conservation principle you will apply. So here we will apply the conservation of mass, no doubt about it, because because of the opening at the bottom of the tank, water is coming out, and that is decreasing the mass and hence decreasing the H in the tank. So this is the physics. So we'll use the conservation of mass. Now, next is we have to choose a control volume to describe it in terms of mathematical description. So let us take a control volume. So I am drawing something. So this is the control volume that I have drawn. So can you tell any one of you that with this drawing of the control volume, I can specify that what is that physical control volume that I am talking about? Yes or no? So I made this drawing. I mean, so it is just like touching the free surface and again aligned with the surface of the cone. So can you tell by this drawing, I can specify that what is that control volume that I am talking about? Any one of you? Yes, any one of you? Just tell your opinion. I mean, I'm not going to criticize you badly if your opinion is not matching with mine, but just tell your opinion. So nobody has any opinion about this, and you have an absolute certainty of what is being talked about with this drawing. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
So any comment from anybody about this, or I will? Okay. So I mean, if this drawing is being put up to me, it is completely ambiguous if it is not further amplified. Why it is ambiguous is because when I have drawn this thing, there could be two possibilities. One is that this is fixed. That means although the water is coming down, but the control volume is fixed. The second possibility would be that this is just an instantaneous picture. At every time the water is coming down, the control volume is following that. So these two could be two different possibilities, although the final answer will not depend on that, but the method of solving the problem will depend on that. And therefore, it has to be specified whether this control volume is fixed or moving with the free surface. Either of these two. So yes, tell.
So moving with the free surface?
No. I mean both are acceptable. But what I am saying is what you are taking has to be specified. I am not telling that only one of these two options is the valid one and the other is wrong. What I am simply telling is that out of these two options, whatever you choose, your method of solving the problem will depend on that, and therefore you have to spell out, although final answer will remain the same. So let us take this example, just for a change from the previous example, that control volume moving along with the free surface. So this is the specification of this dotted thing. So again, then let us write the conservation of mass, dm dt of the system. So here, because we are having a moving control volume, this relative velocity I have put so that we don't make mistakes. Now, so it is a very unique case where the control volume is not only moving but it is also deforming. So it's a sort of moving and deformable. I mean, moving in a sense that one of the surfaces is moving. That means overall it is moving, and deformable is the correct terminology, because even if you are considering it to be locally anchored, it is deforming because simply the free surface is coming down. So in that way, let us put up different terms. This is 0, but now this will not be 0. Okay, so 0 is equal to, now what is this mass inside the control volume? Mass inside the control volume is the density times the volume inside the control volume. Volume inside the control volume, this is a, first of all, see this small hole, it has different implications. Always remember one thing, when a problem statement is given, now many of us have a tendency to think that certain words are given for beautifying the statement. Remember, this is not English composition. This is a science based discussion. So every word has a strong meaning rather than a literary meaning, literature oriented meaning. Literature oriented meaning will have certain subjectivity, but here it's a specific problem where the small itself has a significance. So first of all, one significance is that because it is small, this is almost like a point, so that although this is a frustrum of a cone in the real sense, this can be actually considered as a cone because this is just very small. So if that may be approximated as a cone, this will be 1/3 pi, let us say this is r locally, 1/3 pi r square h. That is the volume. Plus, so now when you have this one, so out of the surfaces, the lateral surface, there is no flow. What about the upper surface 1 and the lower surface 2? So what about the upper surface? This integral has three surface components in the control surface: upper surface, lower surface, and lateral surface. Lateral surface, there is no flow because they of no penetration. What about surface number 1? Can any one of you tell?
Relative velocity is 0 on upper surface 1.
Exactly. So relative velocity is 0 on upper surface 1 because the upper surface is of the control volume is moving with the free surface itself. So free surface is coming down with some local velocity, and the upper surface of the control volume is also coming down in the same. That is how we have chosen. So that is why this sentence I have written that control volume is moving along with the free surface. So that has to be well described. So in that way, only integral in the control surface is integral over 4. So integral over 4. So integral of rho v dot this one. So here, so from the previous example, we have seen that if it is a flow out of the control surface, this integral is positive. If there is a flow into the control surface, this integral is negative, just for the dot product. So here it's out, so it is positive. So it is VE and dA over this surface number 2. Now here we will make certain approximations. The first approximation is that this VE is uniform over A. A2. So this is an approximation. This is not exact. And the density is also uniform over it. Okay. So if we consider this, and again, there is a justification. See, this is a large surface, but when it is converging to a very small surface, to ensure continuity, the water is moving out at a very high velocity because area is less, so area into volume is fixed. So it is coming out with a high velocity, and so there is a fair chance that it is a turbulent flow where the velocity is uniform. So in that way, this is not impractical. So if that be the case, then this boils down to rho V. Now these two come out of the integral, and integral dA will be pi r naught square. But this doesn't solve the problem because we have to make an approximation for VE. Okay. So we have to make an approximation for VE, and for that, so we have actually solved this tank filling problem, or a tank emptying problem rather, in the previous class, if you recall, and or one of the previous classes, previous class. And what you can see here is that that can be approximate. I mean, there we found a very complex differential equation, but under certain restrictions, this could be simplified to the Torricelli's equation, root 2gh. And the advantage with the Torricelli's equation, so you have to tell what are the assumptions that I am putting as a part of this exercise. That you have to tell. You cannot just simply write this. But one of the important aspects of those considerations is that it doesn't depend on the geometry, because it's considering just a streamline between 2 points 1 and 2 separated by a height h. Doesn't matter whether what is the geometry of the cross section which is being analyzed. So in that way, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a conical, frustum of a cone, etc. So if all those other assumptions are justified for the Torricelli's equation, you can approximate it as root 2gh. So once you are able to do that, what you do next is we will just simplify it. So now in this equation, you have to remember one thing: r and h are also related, because you have r by h is equal to what? Tan theta. So you have 0 is equal to rho pi by 3 h cube tan square theta plus rho VE pi r naught square. So if we make the further, see, to proceed, you have to make further assumptions. One further assumption, and which is just good enough to solve the remaining part of the problem, is that you can this rho is not a function of time. This is assumption, and that nobody has told us. So you have an remaining h is only a function of time and nothing else. So this partial derivative you can approximate by ordinary derivative. So let us write this: rho pi by 3 tan square theta d dt of h cube is equal to minus rho pi r naught square v. And v is root 2gh. Now the only other thing, I mean, this is also an assumption, but a more subtle assumption, that these two rows are constants. So that means all the densities are the same, and it is okay because it's liquid water. So all the densities are, so these densities talks about the homogeneous density inside the tank, and this density is what is living, and these are just constants for the same liquid water. Pi you can cancel, so you can write 1 by 3 tan square theta this 3h square dh dt is equal to minus r naught square gh. Okay, so in that way you can find out what is dh dt, and you can substitute at h equal to
h by 2. That is what is given. So dh dt is negative, you can see from here. So because clearly h is decreasing with time. So we will conclude our this thing today. Just one point is that I will ask you to solve the same problem with the control volume choice number 2. That is, the control volume is fixed and it is not moving with the free surface. So that comes up with to you as a homework, and you please solve that. We will continue on Thursday, and I just want to tell you in advance that the coming Monday we will consider we will organize a class test. So possibly the first formal class test. We had a bit of informal quiz, and I will post the answers to all the quiz problems well before the class test. So the class test will be of similar duration and format. And Monday the advantage is that you have class from 12 to 1. So even if it stretches a little bit, it doesn't encroach with your next class. So there is a bit of flexibility in the time. And whatever we'll be covering up to the coming Thursday will be included in that the agenda of the test. So let us close the class today, and we will continue on the coming Thursday.